to another episode of the Half Blacksmith Show, episode 2. Mama, I'm doing it. Look at me, I'm going to be a star. Today we're going to be helped out by buddy Patrick, all right? Now, Patrick, he's this, like, skinny, small type of guy, but he was into this chick, and this chick didn't like him, and he's all depressed about it. Now he's going around talking about, oh, I'm reading up on feminine psychology online, and women like alpha males, and we're all trying to help him and be like, no, man, it's just you. They have to like you. Women are different. They're people. You know, everybody's different. Everybody likes certain things, but no, he doesn't want to listen, so I want to make him feel better, and so we're going to be making him something awesome today, all right? We're making a Kusarigama for him, because I don't know if you guys have had a custom weapon before, but when you get a custom weapon from somebody, it makes you feel good. Like, there's a weird truth you get from it. I don't know how to explain it. It's just like this very truthy truth, and you just get into a good mood. So let's try to get him into a good mood today. Well, that, and there's two things I want from him. He has editing software that I can use so I don't have to have a crappy opening like the one you guys just saw, and I can make the videos better. And two, there's this face mask. It's like calling to me. I just need the face mask. I really want it. So we're gonna trade. We're gonna see if he wants to do the trade for those two things, and then we'll talk to him a little bit later about his whole girl situation and girls in general, and you guys can see what I'm talking about because it's kind of annoying. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Half Blacksmith Show. This is episode 2, and I decided, since on the first episode I didn't give you guys enough forging time, we're going to be doing a lot of forging time right off the bat. I started out with a 10-inch piece of steel, and we're going to start making the blade to the Kusarigama, right? Now, the tail piece is what we're going to be forging out right now. The trick with this is that you actually want it on one side of the steel. You don't want it centered in the middle. This is kind of like making a tang to a knife, but just a little bit different because we're actually going to be curving it over in a little bit. It's because I'm not doing it like you would a regular axe or something that you'd get from the store where they pop a hole through the center of the steel, widen it out, and then the wood goes up. Once you get to here, you want to actually make sure that little curve that you're doing touches the steel as much as you possibly can. Then you want to make sure that the actual blade is centered dead center. Otherwise, it's going to be off center when you're trying to put it onto the piece of wood. The blade's just not going to be straight. Here, we're going to start working on the blade a little bit. I want to give it that nice curve a little bit, but I want to get it a little bit narrow so I'm not wasting steel. I just needed it a tad bit longer. Some people can start with a longer piece. You also want to give it a slight little bend in it. See how it's coming out? We're going to be cutting a lot of that back part off a little bit later on. The next thing that we're going to be making is the mace that goes at the end of the chain. Now, I didn't forge out the chain. I just went and bought a chain from the store. It's a lot easier to do than forging out a chain. All you're going to want to do is take a piece of steel, however long you want, and start bending it over and getting it really, really hot and keep hammering it in. You're going to have to hammer on the top part of it to flatten it down, and then you're going to have to hammer out the sides to get it narrow, whichever shape that you're going to want it to take on in the end. It's not a super hard process, but it's a very time-consuming one. Now, don't get crazy. That white powder that you see, that's borax. Borax helps with forge welding. I found that somewhere. I don't remember where I heard it from, but I wanted to try it out, and it actually worked out pretty well. I just threw some borax on every time I pulled it out of the fire, smashed it out, threw a little bit more before I put it back into the fire, and it works. Don't get crazy. I'm not Tony Montana rich, nor would I waste that much of it. That'd be too much to waste. That'd be a good party to have. You know exactly what I'm talking about, random YouTube watcher named Chris. Chris, I know what you do. We all know what you do. It shows. You just gotta calm down a little bit. Otherwise, you're the life of the party. That's why everyone likes you, and that's why everyone invites you back for more parties. Borax you can find at any place that has detergent or any type of stuff. I think it's some type of something that you use for washing clothes. I don't know what it is exactly, and that's a crappy forge weld. I've done it more often since then, and I've gotten better at it, but all you want to do is just keep heating it up and smashing it out. This next piece here, we're actually just going to smash it down and make like a little rat's tail thing with it. What I'm actually using it for, it's this little piece that I don't know the name of it, but it connects the chain to the sickle, exactly, and we're gonna actually embed it into the wood a little bit. So it's gonna have like this hook hanging down at the bottom that the chain's gonna connect to. So just watch. This is actually a good time. We can start talking about rejection, because I mean, I guess this is technically the theme of this episode is rejection, because Pat keeps getting rejected. Now, I know rejection sucks. Everybody's been rejected by somebody, otherwise everyone would be dating supermodels, right? We all get rejected. It's a natural part of life. But it's all about how you handle the rejection. I don't think Patrick's handling the rejection properly. That and every single girl he seems to like is a dirty skank. Not just like, oh, she's kind of skanky, like the ones that are like, oh, I'll hook up with this dude to go live someplace else because I don't like this area anymore, and then I'll break up with him to date somebody else, blah, blah, blah. The using skank, like a gold-digging skank. By the way, this is the part where we're actually going to start making the handle. I'm cutting it out of one of the old failed guitar bodies that I made from the previous episode. I like the wood from it. It's nothing too crazy. You just want to cut it out however you want the handle to look. I gave mine a nice curve so that the bottom and the top would both be fat, so your hand wouldn't slide up and hit the blade, or your hand wouldn't slide off and like grab the chain. But where was I? Oh yeah, skanks, right? Now, whether you're a man or a woman or whoever's watching this, right? Don't ever let a skank control your life. You just don't want to let them into your life, because all they're going to do is wreck it. Now, when I'm saying skank, some people are like, oh, no, you're talking about women? No, I'm talking about anybody who tries to use you. You do not let them in your life. If you even get a hint that that person is trying to use you, you do not let them come around you. Otherwise, you're just going to end up being heartbroken, sad, and then your friends are going to have to be making you Kusarigamas and things to make you feel better, and it just gets stupid and annoying, and we all got to listen to your problems, but we love you to death. We love you to death, and we would bleed for you, brother. So just stop going after dirty skanks. Please and thank you. And I burnt the wood just because I like the look of burnt wood, and I like fire, so the more things I can burn, the better. But also when you sand it, it gets like this really nice like fade from black to light to black again, and that's what I really wanted with the handle. So you just want to make sure you sand it. I was using, I think, probably 120 grit sandpaper the entire time. I don't like going too higher. Now, the next part, we're going to start making the blade. First thing you want to do is start cutting off any excess steel right by the loop that you made. Now, I'm using a disc grinder. You can use a steel saw too, but you want to make sure everything is completely flat, because in a little bit, you're going to see I'm going to start filing it down, and you want to make sure everything's flat so that when you put it on top where it's going to sit on the handle, it's going to sit flush. All right, if it's not sitting flush, it's gonna come out awkward and like off center, and it's just gonna be really hard to get everything really tight. So you want it flat as possible. Now I'm using the half moon file at that part to give it kind of a little bit of a curve there, because the next part it's gonna swoop in to the blade. I want to leave about an inch that you guys are gonna see a little bit later on, to make sure that if your hand does slide up past the blocking mechanism thing that I built into the handle, that it's not going to actually slice into your finger. It's going to take a little while to get it right, but once you do, it's definitely a necessary process. After you're done cleaning it up, we're actually going to start cutting out the point. Now, the point's the most important part on the weapon. The blade doesn't actually really matter all that much. A really nice point is definitely necessary. Now, I don't want to make this curve all that much. I want a nice, subtle curve into the point, so I'm just going to start filing it down a little bit. Well, not filing, but grinding it down, getting a nice curve, and I'm going to use a belt sander to just get that really nice curve. Now, the next thing that we're going to be doing after we get this done is we're going to start working on the attachment piece to the bottom part of the handle. Now, what you want to do is you really want to file it out and make sure it's nice and round. Now, it's not going to matter a whole lot, so don't get carried away to make sure it's super smooth. Then we're going to use the actual table saw to cut a little slit out of the wood so that we can actually stick this in and see where it's going to sit. Now, you're going to have to do this maybe a couple of times, maybe 1, 2, or 3 times, depending on how thick you actually made it. Just don't go overboard. You want it to sit in there pretty snug. You want to have a little bit of force to snug it in. Now, it was still a hair too big, so I shaved it down a little bit on the belt sander. You can use a file or something to shave it down however you want. But see, you just want to pound it in just right. Once you get it in, mark off the extra and cut it off. When you're done cutting it off, you can clean it up a little bit if you want. I chose to, but you don't have to. You can do this however you want. Now, the next stage that we're gonna start doing is we wanna give the mace a little bit of a tail to bend over that hooks on to the chain, and then we can smash it down a little bit later. But we're gonna start moving into actually the chain assembly. So first you wanna figure out how long you want it. I wanted mine to be a little bit longer just because I'm taller, and then I realized, oh, Patrick's shorter, so I just left it long so I could play with it too. Now, when you're doing this chain assembly part, it's really simple. Just heat it up, slip the chain on, and then once you're done with that, tap it down and make sure it's closed up completely. And it's really easy, so all you have to do is repeat the same process on the mace part and you'll have the complete chain assembly. Now, we're gonna start working on the blade. It's not super important that we actually put a very sharp bottom blade on it, even though I am, and I'm gonna be using a disc grinder. The most important part is gonna be the actual tip, because the tip's meant for piercing, all right? So you wanna use a file to hone it in a little bit to make it very sharp. Now, if you don't have a big enough forge to harden the entire length of whatever you made, all you really need is the tip to be hardened, but I can harden the entire thing. And now I'm actually using oil to quench this in, because when you quench with it, it doesn't leave weird marks on it like water does. Water leaves like these weird bubble things, and I try not to use it a lot of times unless I want to do a lot of polishing. Now, the next step that we're going to be doing is we're actually going to be cutting out the little piece of wood that's going to actually slide up in between the little slot for the Kusarigama. It's going to take a long time and a lot of filing. I filed a lot of it by hand because I wanted to make sure it was very tight. And once I got it to the right tightness, I started pounding it on, and then more wood would pop up. I'd shave it down, and then I'd continue to pound it on a different way. And you just have to repeat this process and keep going over and over and over again until you get it right. And ooh, isn't that really sexy right there? Yeah, it is. Like HBS on it. Next step, all you want to do is take the chain assembly part that goes to attach, tap it in, and then you're going to want to run pins through it. Now, I did 3 pins just because I wanted to make sure that it actually stuck. I've done 2 pins on a similar project and it kind of broke later. You want to make sure they're deep enough into the center of the wood that they're not going to actually pull out very easily, because if you have some person come along and play with it a bit too rough, it could possibly break and pull out, and you just don't want that to happen, especially if you're going to be swinging that mace around, all right? So make sure it's in the middle, has enough force, enough everything to keep it stable. Put more pins if you want to. Once you get it done and you butter the inside, put epoxy in, all you want to do is cut off the pins. Now, you don't actually have to wait super long to start cutting out the pins because it goes by really quickly. And what I did is I made sure I ran 1 pin through the head of the Kusarigama just to make sure that it didn't fly off when people were like stabbing stuff with it, and you just clean it up a little bit. Now let's go show Patrick. Dude, check this. I just finished making it. What the f*** how do you use this? Alright, dude, it's a Kusarigama. It's like a ninja weapon, right? So, the chain and mace, they're meant to like wrap somebody up, and this stab is used to stab them. It's a ninja weapon.
This is so cool, dude. How long did it take to make this?
I don't know, man. It took me like 2 days, kinda.
So how do I use this?
Alright, so, what's your dominant hand?
My right.
Right here, so take this one right. Because that's going to be like, that's going to be like the slash hand. Take just a little bit of it and just whack it. Dude, try it on the Alright, hold on, man. I got you. I was watching a video on
I like how you got a melon.
Yeah, Pat, get it. Oh, hold up. Sweet. Dude, take a bite of it.
This is for my enemies.
I'm crazy.
Stir turd.
Happen is I'm gonna hit this thing so hard. It's gonna come at me and I'm gonna slice it in midair.
All right, yeah, be a real fruit ninja. You actually got it. Stab it one time for me, Pat. Just...
In life, it's truly hard to find good friends that you trust. Patrick gave me the face mask before I even asked for it, before he even knew he could keep the Kusarigama. And when I brought up the question of the editing software, he said, yeah, it wasn't even a question to him. He just did it.
Do you know how cool you look in that mask?
I know, man.
I'm glad I gave that to you. That just sits on my shelf.
Dude, I'm gonna wear it every time I forge, brother.
Yeah, because it prevents hitting your eyes. Look at that moon. You need to get a thing in the moon.
Playing with weapons outside in the middle of the night.
The full moon of truth.